Welcome to the Marketing Stack podcast. And today I'm talking to Tom Libelt, who is actually in Thailand as well. He's in Chiang Mai, business owner. He runs a podcast called Smart Brand Marketing. And he's done a bunch of things over the years. I'm curious to know how Tom actually got into Thailand and what brought him here to the land of the living. And yeah, we're going to be covering marketing. We're going to be talking about courses and just life in general at the moment. Tom, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you.
Yeah, sounds good, man. I'm glad to be here. You're in Bangkok, right?
I am in Bangkok. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're under lockdown at the moment.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but it's been like this for a while.
We've been seeing people escape to Chiang Mai because everything's open. Like I told you before, I went to the gym, so we've been seeing like an exodus from Bangkok, all coming here. So yeah, I feel you.
Yeah, it's difficult when you've got a 1-year lease. It's like moving around is a little bit difficult.
Oh, no, that doesn't stop me. Doesn't stop me. I got a 1-year lease in the office here in my apartment. I still leave as soon as anything happens. I'm gone. I could care less. I just keep it.
Yeah, cool. So let's get into some business stuff. So you've been helping courses, and you've got an agency to help course owners basically sell when they can't sell. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So what have you seen? Like, obviously there's an explosion of courses and online creators because of pandemic this last year and a half. What have you seen that's currently happening? Are people too tired of courses? What's trending? What's the vibe?
I mean, the vibe is pretty good. It's good for business. So like, here's what happened. Before COVID, the courses were coming up. I mean, you've seen it. That's why, we have so many platforms now and so many things. And, after COVID happened, we sort of had another, I would say, a flood of people coming in. Think of, consultants, public speakers, like anyone that used to do things in person or, So no income streams, they came in. So we kind of keep track of how many prospects we have, right? So before COVID, I think we were at like 80,000 possible course creators for our company, which is not a huge market, but it's decent. And then went up to over 300,000 after, I'm not counting like people who are, doing nonsense and we don't even look at them as possible customers. Right. Like these are actually, people who put things together that make sense, like some expertise. So that's a huge kind of insertion in the market, right? It kind of jumped, last March. But, although the other hundreds of thousands of the nonsense people, they do keep the platforms alive, right? Because, they'll still sign up. They might not sell anything, but, these platforms, if you've seen it, they're getting funding. Teachable is on their second round now that I've heard of. Like, Thinkific went public in Canada. Yeah. Coursera went public. Fiverr went public and started their educational part. Right? So, I mean, it's the money is definitely great on that end, right?
Right.
For us, since we're sort of a kind of boutique type agency, it doesn't really matter because we only take a couple clients per month. So, since we like take like less than like 5 per month, like these numbers don't really do anything because, I mean, we'll get 30 leads and it's still like, well, I just have to say no 25 more times.
And that's a good position to be in.
It is. What it did is it allowed us to sort of push people away more because that's what you want to do as an agency. You want to push all the wrong people out. And it allowed for us to get more of the type of customers we want easier, right? Because when there's a flood of leads, then it's much simpler to like, okay, well, let's just get these people out the way. And then, so it made my job a lot easier because like with our company, if you've looked through my resume, which is pretty extensive, it's on libelt.com. We move, from one thing to the next every couple of years. Like, we'll be doing course marketing and stuff like that, but we are looking now into transitioning into not really productized, like we have some ideas there, but more of a SaaS scaling type business, right? Because we've had scaling stuff before, then I went back into consulting, and now I'm thinking of how do we make something again that's, So with the perfect clients, you have good money, good margins, little stress, and the time to do what you want with that, which for us was the goal to now move into this piece. So yeah, I mean, life is good. I can't complain.
And then also the other benefit of, I don't want to use the word like staying small or being selective in that, like limiting yourself by saying, okay, we only work with 5 or whatever number of clients a month, is you get to keep a small team and really develop that team and not have to hire all the time. Because I think there's also a lot of challenge there when it comes to trying to grow. And I know a lot of agencies are trying to grow big, but then that also has its other problems and challenges.
We've been big before. So we niched down from a bigger agency. We had a SEO and marketing agency which targeted everybody in the world. I'm never doing that again. Like, we don't want to grow. Look, if I hire 2 more people to handle, let's say 3 more clients, my margins will go down. I'll probably be making personally less than I am now, have more stress and more stuff to take care of. I got 2 or 3 more clients, and now I got 2 extra people to deal with. So we do not want to grow. This is why we are starting to move into the SaaS and software and things again, because that's something I can scale with a small team again.
Right.
And to grow, we don't need an extra 2, 3, 4 people. We just need more customers. And yeah, I mean, worst case scenario, we need more customer service people, but I'll have a manager handling them. It'll be the same thing for me. I'll just speak with one person once a week. So yeah, I see those agencies. Usually what happens is, and you've probably seen these with agencies, once they grow big enough, the owner always hates his life.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, they have, on paper, oh, we're making this much revenue. And I got to tell you, like, one of my really, really good buddies, he had an agency in Atlanta. It was bigger than mine, office, 20 something people, huge contracts. You know what that means, right? Huge contracts, a lot of work and nonsense you got to deal with. Right?
Yeah.
And he was making less than me and hating his life.
Yep.
But I mean, on paper, if you looked, like, oh, this guy just works from a small office. His team is everywhere. Where that guy, he's got dogs in his office. It's that, it's cool. Well, I did better. But that's what I've seen, and he kind of moved into the same direction I'm doing. He's like, screw this. Like, I don't want so many workers. And, he let people go. But yeah, on paper, it looks sexy, right? I'm getting a $150,000 contract. At this moment, if a course creator comes to me and is like, yeah, I want to pay you $20,000 a month even, no, I'm good. Because I have a sweet spot where I know, okay, I'm taking this much, I'm moving the needle for you, but it's not enough for you to bother me much. You know what I mean? Like, I have an amount where I'm like, we're set, you're set, and you're not paying enough to complain. So, you know what I mean? Like, there's a number always, and around 20,000, yeah, I find those bigger clients, because we've had them before. We had course creators paying like 20, 30,000 per month, and they thought we were kind of like full-time employees of theirs,
Yeah. They think they're buying everything.
They're buying, which, I understand, but I just said, that's not the type of business I want to be in. I'd rather make a bit less, have easy clients, work on their stuff like 3-4 hours per week. And if they want a phone call, it's like, well, you're not really paying me enough for the phone calls. We can do one maybe, but it's just, and I just want to make it a win-win for both. Like, we make sure we do what we promise them, but I'm just looking at myself and my team, like, we don't want to get bothered.
Yeah. Because the stress that comes with it is not worth it.
It's not worth it. Yeah. But the reason I'm saying this is because it took me a long time being in business to figure out, if you don't control your own company, if you don't put constraints on how you build your company, and you let your clients dictate, and sometimes that is with money, because I mean, look, I get it. Getting 2 clients like that, and you get a quick 40,000 injection in the bank, or like my buddy 200,000, because you had those like hospitals and stuff. Yeah, I mean, I get it. Like, you look at your bank account, you have a drink today, and like, this is great, and then tomorrow you're just like, oh man, this is going to be painful. But that's what happens when you let clients dictate. Like, even when we select our prospects, and if they, during the prospecting part, like when we're going through a buyer journey, if they show me any red flags, and like, I tell them this is the way we do business, and then tell me like, oh, well, I'll, think about it. And I'm like, you're not going to think about anything, because I just marked you down as a no.
Right.
Because if you don't let me control how I'm doing things, I don't want you as a client. And that's kind of a great thing of, being able to do what I do. But for companies that have these like issues, like, I hate going to work, and like, my clients tell me what to do, and I'm, you got to set constraints, and you got to say no to a lot of things. And firstly, bad clients up front. You say no at that point, a lot of problems go away. It's much harder saying no when they gave you money.
Yeah. after the fact is much more difficult.
Much
100%.
much more difficult. Yeah, you take on a big client, he's horrible for you, and then you're like halfway through work and they start giving you a hard time, and you kind of felt that was going to happen. It's not really cool to stop it halfway and tell them to go away, right? You much rather just say, no, just go find someone else, let them have fun with you.
Well, I think it comes down to like not only being able to control your time, but it's also you like being in Thailand, you've been able to build this lifestyle that you wanted, right? Like it's centered around that. And so correct me if I'm wrong, but the client side or the work side has a very major impact on that side as well. So it all ties together. It's like more stress, less quality of life.
Sort of like my older business was more built towards lifestyle. And I stayed, in New York and Taiwan and all over Europe. Thailand was just one of the places, right? Which I do like, but it's never been a place I stay all the time. But lately, what I want is I want the peace of mind and the quiet to be able to think, to build up stuff that I want to build, right? If you don't have that thinking time and the moments where you can get bored, because you need that, you need to be able to get bored to get creative and come up with new things.
Right.
If you're busy all the time and running around and this is why we don't take any more clients, even though we could, that would make it impossible for me to get bored. And then I can't come up with new ideas and I can't, build up a business that's going to be actually probably much, much better long-term than consulting. Mm-hmm. Consulting is great, easy money, quick, high margins, but it's a hard exit. It's very hard to exit from a business like that.
Yeah. You're probably the only person who actually wants to be bored, but in a positive way.
In a positive way, because that's how I get creative. All the things that happen that I've built, I filmed a documentary and all these stuff, they happened because I got my previous business, to a point where I got bored out of my mind. Money was coming in and I just didn't, I could sit, like in one of my business, I could sit around for 6 months, not speaking to my team, getting paid all the time. And I really had nothing to do. That's the cool. Best thing. Yeah. But that's what you want, to be able to grow different things, right? Like you want to be able to get bored. But yeah, that's sort of like my idea now. So it's not more of a lifestyle. It's more of like, how do I get my creative side up? And I need time for that.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about course validation, because I think a lot of people, like you mentioned, they're just building something and they're not necessarily checking if there's a market fit or or actually seeing if anybody's going to buy the thing. What's your take on course validation, and what would you say is your process?
Well, if you take the correct path, then the course validates itself, right? The correct path, I'll give you an example of it, and then you'll start seeing why a lot of people are having problems, is let's say you come up with a service, right, that you're doing. Initially, what you will do is you will have a do it for you service, right? You're going to do all the work because you're trying to figure things out. You don't really know what people want, but it's the easiest thing to sell. Mm-hmm. Everyone will pay you for it, do it yourself. It's the easiest thing. So it's also the most annoying. Once you get past a few months or weeks or years of that, you're going to move into a do it with you service, right? Because you're going to start realizing some of these things you really can't do well, because the expertise needs to come from that person, and then you just don't want to do.
Right.
When you move past that, you're going to usually move into one-on-one consulting. You no longer do any work at that point, right? You kind of move through all that. Now I'm going to coach you. I kind of know what I'm doing, but I haven't yet developed a foolproof method, right? So I'm still doing one-on-one consulting and getting as many clients, because there's going to be stuff that comes up and I fine tune, right? So the second piece of that stage is I've done enough where I now do one-on-one consulting with the same method that works for every single client.
Right.
You then move into group coaching, because if you have the method, then the only thing now is, well, I don't do any work anyways. I can only do so many one-on-one consulting, so let's move them into a group with my proven method, right? And then the next step is an online course, because then it's just a pricing issue. Right? I have a proven method. I have people in my group. They're learning it. But some people can't either show up at that time or pay me as much as I want for my group coaching. Here's an online course that's already validated. You don't need to do anything for that. So often the trick is moving away from doing any work for the client to just consulting. A lot of people have trouble with that because it's a mindset shift, and actually understanding that the reason you're doing one-on-one consulting is to develop a method. It's not for you to just not do any work and continue this for the rest of your life. If you're not developing a method, you're always going to be stuck at that point, because I've seen that's where people have problems. The second one is, and usually it's only because them not developing a method, they have a really hard time moving to group coaching, right? Because if you think about it, if you do one-on-one consulting and you just don't have any more time, but you don't have a method that works the same way for everyone, your group coaching is going to be a mess. It's going to be a mess.
You can't apply it.
You can't apply it. And this is where problems happen, right? Because from group coaching, moving to an online course, it's like a seamless transition, right? But if you think of who usually wants to do online courses, and we mentioned these people before: consultants, coaches, public speakers, educators. Right. Consultants and the first other one often have not developed a method, and they try to skip the group coaching, going straight into the online course, because they know in the back of their minds that it's going to be a mess if they try to group coach people, right? And then they wonder, like, oh, how come it's not working? Public speakers and educators usually skip most of these steps, because all they do is they teach theories to a group that someone else got their asses in the seats.
Right.
So they think that, they're like these huge, smart people, like, yeah, I've taught Harvard for 30 years, or I've spoken to 2,000. You haven't actually got one person in that seat. Someone else forced them to either, one, listen to you to get a degree, or two, they paid for the conference, might as well. Right. That's what most of them happen. Yeah. So they move from that piece where, like, oh, I already do group coaching, which you're not doing group coaching. You're speaking at the people with nonsense theories. And then they make an online course. And then again, it becomes a problem, right? Because there's no real method that works. And,
right.
So if you understand this whole path, you know where you're at. And if you can't validate, then you also know, like, what you need to do first.
Right. But I think it's very interesting, because a lot of the platforms, and Samcart also just launched a course sort of component. All of these platforms don't necessarily guide you on that path.
No one does.
They're not talking about the fact that the experience leading up to creating something is important, that it's necessary in many cases.
Because look, there's always going to be outliers, right? If you're a celebrity,
for sure,
if you already have a following, like some kind of influencer, if you hit the right market at the right time, you might make money. And we do have those type of creators. We'll have people, that's our second bucket. You know what, Tom? I launched this course. I put videos on YouTube, 5 per week. I'm making low 6 figures now. But now when I try putting more videos on, I'm not making more income. It plateaued. And I tried using the same technique on Facebook, and I'm not getting any customers. I'm like, well, why not? Well, because I don't know why it's working. Like, they figure it out, right? They got lucky, one channel, one message, something hit up. And usually those type of people, they have hit a niche that would have pretty much worked anyways.
Right.
So for example, when you create courses, you have to understand, are you creating something that needs internal motivation or already has external motivation? And often the ones that already have external motivation, they will work. So if someone is trying to get a life insurance job in America, they might have to pass a Series 6 or a Series 7 or a Series 65 exam to get that job. And the job will tell them, you will not be employed until you pass this exam, and you have 6 weeks to pass the exam. And your choices are getting someone else to help you with this process, come to us on the weekends, and we'll send you one of our old sales guys, which is going to be boring. And then, you're going to have to drive and listen to him. And then someone else pops up online saying, I'll do this for you online. I'll teach you how to pass this exam. You catch them on YouTube. They sound entertaining. You can do it from home. You're going to click buy because, well, what is the outcome? I'm getting a job where I'm going to get paid. Right? So these type of things is where people get lucky, and then they just can't replicate it. But if it does not have that component, you're not a celebrity influencer, you're not going to get lucky. So any of these meditation courses, yoga courses, where like, I'm trying to save the human. Yeah. I mean, good luck with that. Good luck with that. Because I see it all the time. Right. And I try to explain it to him. I was like, you don't have that component, so now we actually need to create a really persuasive buyer journey. And if you don't have an edge over a free YouTube video where I can learn meditation and no one knows you, and you can't prove that you've went through this journey I explained before, because if you did, then you already have an audience.
Right.
You're going to have fun.
So speaking of the just the development of courses, like we've all seen courses go on Udemy and Skillshare and all of these type of classes where it's just one way. Then obviously the course platforms where it's video or audio or text, and there's just, delivery. And then I'm seeing a lot of activity in the cohort-based live delivery model. What do you think about cohort-based courses, and how would somebody actually decide whether to do a course with video only through a platform where people can log in, or live with an audience?
Well, a cohort is basically group coaching. That's what that is, right? So a cohort often is a much easier sale because if you remember the path, right? You have a method, you get people live. That live component is what makes it an easier sale. And the reason they created the cohort platforms, and I've spoken with a lot of the course creators, is because the platforms like Thinkific, Teachable, Kajabi, they do a very, very crappy job of creating communities and letting people work in teams, and then with the rest. So the platforms were created basically to handle that step before. It's going to be a harder sale for you and much harder for you to actually get people to complete the class if you stick it on the, Thinkific or Teachable, which is the last piece of it. Like it's the last, like take it by yourself at home, don't speak to anyone type course, right? That comes after group coaching.
Right.
So people actually realize that we need something for that step before, because we're going to have much more success with it. A lot of people who are one-on-one consultants and they have a method, they need to move into this space, but there was nothing built for them.
Yeah.
It was either us doing it on Zoom, which is what everyone was doing, which, doesn't work perfectly for groups and different things. So they needed platforms, right? So it's the platform before the one like Thinkific. Now, Udemy and Skillshare and all of those, that's marketplaces. Those are not platforms. They're marketplaces. You put your stuff out there, usually devalued, and you don't control your clients. You don't control the pricing. You don't control almost anything.
Yeah. You don't have the audience at all.
You don't have anything. I mean, they can take away reviews from you. They can do whatever they want. So if you do have expertise, but you're just a horrible salesperson, can't market, have no skills, but still want to put it out there, yeah, marketplaces are great. And I've seen people make, the biggest client I've had that came from Udemy made around, I think, $250,000 a year. But you know what his pain point was? How do I get off this thing?
Right. Because now he's too dependent on one source of revenue.
Very dependent. He lost a lot of reviews. His income was dipping, going. They were doing like deals on his course and he had no control, no audience. All those negatives I said. It was an expert who, once again, good content, didn't know how to execute the marketing. He went on a marketplace, and then, the next step was like, how do I control this? If I sell one of my own courses, that's like selling 50 on that platform, So the cohorts come first. Then, depending on whether you have marketing expertise or not, then you choose either a marketplace or your own platform.
Mm-hmm. I've seen a hybrid as well, where it's kind of a Thinkific or a Teachable course, that type of scenario. It's just consumption, do the thing, learn the thing, and then the component of community, which in my mind is more of a support group, the Facebook group or whatever, that's the component. And then they're guising it as community, but in my mind, it's just support.
It's a crappy solution. This was the Zoom or Thinkific Teachable component with the Facebook group. But again, when you have a Facebook group, how do you assign teams? How do you let them easily do things in a controlled environment?
Almost impossible.
How do you control the Facebook group when Facebook owns it, right? These cohort softwares, what they do is they let people regain control, right? I own all my students. I own the community. I set a path for each one. I can put you into groups. I can switch groups. I can put you in a class. Like there's so many things you can do. So basically, instead of having these like stupid, like Frankenstein duct tape solutions, this is where the cohort software kind of came out. But it's just because, we were all using like just whatever, Zoom, Facebook group, Slack, Discord, Telegram. And in the end, it's just a mess.
Any recommendations of any software? Anything that you're using or that you recommend?
I mean, the cohort ones are still pretty new. I don't really want to,
Sure.
They're all either in beta or getting funding now or just kind of came out. I think that's still a pretty good field to get into, that one.
Yeah,
because the regular
is huge
platforms, the regular platforms are kind of already mature enough where you don't really want to compete with Kajabi, for example.
Right.
Marketplaces are just a horrible business model unless you can get huge funding and grow it. Dude, Udemy, I don't know about now, but I've spoken with some of the people, I think 4 months ago, they still haven't ever turned a profit.
Wow. That's
all
crazy.
those courses, all those years, still living off of funding. So
sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Well, sounds like a recipe for more funding and an exit.
Right.
That's what most of them do, right? This is the San Francisco way. Like I just spoke with a buddy of mine because we're kind of building our own stuff, and we're looking at all this software that's coming out. It's like, hey, sign up, and we do this and that, but there's no revenue. So you can see, and then you look at some dude from San Francisco with a Series A funding, and let's get as much investor money as possible, and hopefully in 6 years before shit really hits the fan, I'll figure out how to make money from this, or my salary is enough to just keep me going, or we make an exit. Like really, that's the business model for most of these.
Yeah. Apart from just validation, what are other people struggling with at the moment? Obviously, there's marketing. There's, you mentioned people not being able to sell themselves well, and expertise. Other than that, what are people complaining about? What are they feeling?
It's mostly just not making sales. When you have enough sales, you stop hearing complaints. Because most of the problems that people have in their business can be solved with money. I'm not talking about your life or your health and things like that, but your business issues. If you're making enough profit and revenue, all the annoying stuff can be handled or paid for or kind of swept under the rug with money, right? Just someone else do this. So that's the big thing, man. Like people come from the educator point of view a lot of the time, and not just even talking about all these people that skip the journey steps I told you before, because that's always going to be issues there. But even if they do, they don't understand the buyer's journey. They don't understand they need to be persuasive and give people an outcome, explain sort of how they're going to move from the pain to these amazing outcomes and how they are the vehicle to move them there. Like they just don't understand these concepts. Right? They don't understand like that the lead magnet for a online course is not the same thing as a lead magnet for a service or a product or anything else. You're not giving away samples and hope people get more, because if you already give people the education, then why would they buy more of the same education? And I see this happening all the time. So it's just like simple concepts, right? Just people don't get it. They have no idea how to create a good buyer's journey, do the marketing. And they get that confused too. They're like, hey, Tom, I need your help with marketing. I was like, do you? Have you sold any? No. Well, then you don't need help with marketing. You need to fix your buyer journey first, because if I get you 1,000 more prospects into your crappy funnel, well, what's 0 times 1,000?
Right. You're not going to convert many.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like sometimes I just have to step back with them and be like, look, like, but a lot do understand too. The ones that went through the journey, like I told you, and they're the right people, and they know. They'll tell me like, Tom, like I just don't know how to create the buyer's journey. I don't know how to get the right audience. I don't know how to then market and scale this.
Right.
And then it's easy because I'm like, well, yeah, because that's what we got to do.
So so obviously, yes, money is going to solve a lot of those business problems, but to get to the money, it's all the pre-problems or the stuff that comes before that to figure out, what's the gap, what's missing.
Yeah. Which again, though, a person that has a business and then just has those problems, well, he throws some money at me to solve them. You know what I mean? So this can be solved with money as well. Right. That's kind of what business is. Like you can solve most of these problems. If you have a really good group coaching service, but you're just unable to sell it in a course, well, you just throw some money at me and I'll solve that. It's not a big deal.
Right.
But again, if you're missing the steps on the journey and like, I'm broke, I haven't done anything, no method, no group coaching, course is not selling, and I have no money, well, good luck.
Yeah.
You're going to have 20 years of fun before you figure it out.
I also think there's a lot of misinformation on all the platforms, YouTube, Facebook, wherever you look, where it's like, yeah, put up a course, run Facebook ads and you're golden. And it's just so problematic because, people are are putting up landing pages and they're expecting magic to happen. What is your take on the advertising side of building an audience and building sales for courses?
Well, the main thing you got to understand, like, look, if you're going to ask a surgeon that all he does is cut people's fingers off, what you should do with your fingers, he's going to tell you what? Cut them off, right? So if you start asking a platform or looking for information on, let's say, the Thinkific blog about what you should do, well, the first thing you need to do is put a course on our platform, and then you need to create a sales page and this. So they're just repeating stuff they heard from someone else, right? But the whole point is we need to sell you on putting the course up because, that's how we make money. It's like going to one of these like elite pages, blogs, and being like, well, what do I need to do? Well, you need to put up a sales page and an opt-in page. I mean, come on, guy. Then you go on Facebook, and then what do you say? Well, I mean, you need to get some paid advertising going. I mean, what are you doing? Right. So it's like where you get your information is, kind of important. Now, if you don't have the experience, then you're going to have a hard time maybe finding the right audience. It's going to take a lot of testing. Do you need a lead magnet? Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe you just need to show people a video or two and they're set. Maybe they just need to go through a webinar. Maybe they just need some kind of a quiz. Maybe they don't need anything. Who says they need a lead magnet? Now, should it be free or paid? I don't know. Depends on your niche, right? Because I have nothing to sell you from those things. So I'm not going to push you because I don't know. We have to test it. We have to look at your audience, at your outcome. And then I got to think, are we selling emotions? Are we selling your personality? Are we selling just the outcome? Are we moving by facts? Are you doing tech or are you doing something that's soft skills? Based on that, I'll kind of figure out like, what do we need to do? Because if we're selling your personality, I mean, some audio video would probably do well, right?
Yeah.
But if you're selling like a factual how to hack this thing, I mean, maybe some kind of a quiz or some kind of a contest or something else would work much better. I don't know. It depends, right? That's where the experience comes in. But all these like platitude advice type things you see in, online, like, oh, you need to have a tripwire. I was like, do I really? Because I know which book you read and I know where you got this from. And I know it's not working for you, but you're still teaching it. Because I know enough of these people where, I know that half the device they teach, they just, monkey see, monkey do. And, it's not working for me, but it'll work for you.
Well, the other thing is I think people are not necessarily aware of the different options. They're not, and again, I think it comes back to that journey, right? How have they taken the steps to actually figure out their own message, their own marketing, their own audience, the buyer journey. So unfortunately, if people are not too gullible in the sense that they're not quite sure what works for them, then they're going to go down rabbit holes for years.
Yeah. So I'll give you this example. Like I had a guy recently come to me and he's like, Tom, I'm in the construction niche. Like I'm not into construction, but I can picture construction guys, right? I'm in the construction niche and I just created a webinar and a great course and it's not selling. I'm like, okay, how's the webinar doing? 3 people showed up. I'm like, okay, so what do you need from me? Help me fix the webinar. Okay, when's the last time you watched the webinar? He's like, 3 weeks ago. Really, on construction? He's like, no, on how to create webinars. And I was like, okay, when is the last time you seen a webinar on construction? He's like, I haven't seen one.
I know why.
So then, it took him a while, but he's like, well, yeah, maybe my audience would not watch webinars,
Yeah.
And that's what you need to think of your audience and not these things that people tell you. Now, what you could do is think, okay, my audience needs to see these different things to maybe get them to buy into this idea of the course. Now, what's the best way of me to present those? Instead of like, hey, they told me to do a webinar, I'm going to do a webinar. Really? For plumbing guys? For construction guys? Yeah, you're going to throw them into, like, for foreman? I've knew a couple of these guys. Like, they could barely find time to sleep. Right. 1, they're not technical usually. 2, they're not going to show up and get off their job and, have someone maybe mess up some of the work because they need to be in for your live webinar at 10 a.m. on Thursday. Like, please.
Right. Not practical at all for that.
Yeah. So what that tells me is you don't know your audience, right? And you used to be in that same spot. So think of yourself. If you didn't see any webinars or had no clue what's going on, what in the world do you think they do? Right. So this is why, taking advice from internet marketers is probably the worst thing a person can do.
I think there's also, I agree totally. And I was just going to say, I think there's also this component of when people are online, when they're searching, when they're, consuming YouTube videos or they're on Facebook or wherever, they're not necessarily looking at the platforms from a business point of view or from a buyer's point of view, from their audience's point of view. They're not necessarily paying attention to the other stuff that's going on. So, as an agency, I don't get served agency ads. I've got to go look for them to figure out what other agencies are doing. It's just an example. And that's part of the problem. It's like, oh, I don't know what other people are doing. Yeah, of course, because that's not your interest on the platforms. You most probably are not consuming that type of content. And so you're not seeing what other people are doing. So it's that active, like, let's go figure out what people are doing, what is working, and then maybe testing and trying stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, each platform is built differently too. When someone goes on Google and is searching for either symptoms or solutions or anything, they're at a much different stage than me being bored and scrolling on Facebook.
100%.
Right. So for a lot of these people, like go back to the YouTube person, right, that was doing well, they don't understand that moving from YouTube to AdWords or Facebook, their message is not resonating because it's in a different part of the journey than what's working for them on YouTube. I'm not looking to consume a video on how to do this certain thing with life insurance or understand the concept when I'm on Facebook or looking into AdWords, usually, right? But most of them, they do it, the transition to Facebook, and that's when they completely miss the boat. When I'm on Facebook, I'm bored, and I might have this problem in the back of my mind and like, shit, I got to pass this test. But you showing me a piece of the content is not going to sell me on it. You're ahead. You're ahead of where I'm at. I'm just bored scrolling down and seeing what my friends are doing.
Right.
You might have to hit them with the awareness thing that, what, you might be annoyed with this test that's coming up, and there is a better way. You're not showing them anything yet, which you would on YouTube. So often just using the platform wrong could completely destroy a good message too. And then, you're like, oh, it's not working. I'm like, no, it's just you don't get the awareness stage yet, or you're not at the right stage, but it would work somewhere else.
Then there's also the flip side is like, if you do get it right, then it's like you've unlocked the secret.
Yeah, when you get it right, then people stop complaining. That's when everyone's happy with their business, right? But yeah, I just mentioned that because it's a lot of these things where, I'll hear like, Facebook ads don't work. This doesn't work. I'm like, really? You sure about that?
People are very quick to blame platforms. Like, oh no, Thinkific is not the right tool. I'm going to another one, or whatever the case may be. Facebook ads versus YouTube ads. Like, what you're saying is the foundation is not the platform. The foundation is the message.
The platform is simply a hosting place for a course that usually does a crappy job at the checkout and with sales pages.
Right.
Usually. That's all they do. They're a hosting company for courses. That's it.
Yep.
You don't go to HostGator and be like, hey, look, I put up my website and I'm not getting any work. They're like, we don't care.
Yeah, it's not their problem.
Right. But the difference between HostGator and Thinkific is Thinkific, for example, and, I'm not saying, like, I love the guys, like I work with them. They put out these articles about how to sell courses without even really thinking whether they could pull it off. Mm-hmm. Teachable has made some statements lately, which I don't know. I thought it was cute. They're like, we are going to help 5 people build up their courses and their funnels. You know how many people like come to me with like built out courses and funnels where nothing converts, But I was looking at their wording and they didn't say we're going to help you get your first 10 students. We're going to, it was just, we're going to help you build out your course and funnel. I'm like, that's cute. That's cute. Because what they're trying to do is sell you on that idea that their platform is enough to do both. Because we always will talk about Teachable, like, dude, their editor for landing pages is beyond atrocious. You have to be nuts to leave your sales page with them. But when they say that to you, you got to understand they're trying to sell you on the idea that, no, it's not. It's great. Not selling your courses. They don't care about your course selling. It's like, we're just going to show you how pretty things will look on our platform. And often this is where customers get misled in a lot of ways. They're like, oh my God, they're going to build this stuff and it's going to sell. No one said it's going to sell.
It's going to be built.
It's going to be built. Right.
Yeah.
But you would see how easily it is to be misled for someone coming online, right? Because these guys are promising this, and then they'll send you an article, 50 ways to sell your course, which they don't know. They have no clue.
So So that, in fact, that's an interesting point, because that's part of the reason why I started this podcast too, is to have these types of discussions, to bring awareness to people in terms of what's happening, sure, but also what to look out for, what they need, and also people they can get in touch with. So that leads me to ask you the question of, how can people get hold of you? Where can they find you if they wanted to get in touch to help them put their courses together or get their courses selling?
So I'm not going to help you put your course together. I'm definitely not going to do that. That's you
Sorry.
go to Teachable for that. Like, yeah, I'm not babysitting that process. If you need help selling your course, wemarketonlinecourses.com. That's where you can go to that. If you just want to get a hold of me, which is not that difficult, smartbrandmarketing.com, just hit up the contact form and I actually still look through those.
Cool. Well, Tom, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I had fun chatting to you and debunking a lot of the myths that are out there.
Yeah, for sure, man. It was fun. Yeah. I mean, I love talking about this stuff, but when you kind of put me in that seat of someone, that's kind of new online, I just look at the industry and I'm like, man, like there's just so much of this, like really, it's misleading, but it's like, it's done in such a nice way where you kind of think like, they're giving you something else. It's like a switch and bait, like I'm going to help you to do this thing because you're asking the wrong question because you don't know what the right question is. Right. Sure. And I will often tell people, like when someone's like, hey, what's the best platform? I was like, I think what you're asking me is, how do I sell these courses? And then they're like, yeah, but what? I'm like, but you see, you don't get that the platform's not going to do the work for you.
Right.
Now, if you ask me, which platform allows me to do quizzes and this and that, I'm like, good question, but that's not what 99% of people ask. But they're kind of misled by thinking that like, oh, if I go on this, I'm making sales. No, that's not how it works. Yeah. So just, having like that mindset of like a beginner all the time, which I try to cultivate because that's how you create the best buyer journey. Yeah. It makes these conversations interesting.
Cool. Thank you.